Welcome to Ladies in Law, where real-world advice meets professional wisdom and empowerment in realms of law and business. Your hosts, Lisa Goucher, Dawn Smith, and Kellye Raymond, bring you innovative strategies, practical guidance, and inspirational stories. Join us as we inspire and support women to thrive in traditionally male-dominated fields. We're here to promote inclusivity and provide practical advice for success. Hi, Lisa here with Kellye, and today we have a special guest. She came all the way from Louisiana. Super excited to have Lexlee Overton here. She is a wife, mother, trial lawyer, and she is an amazing coach about getting the best out of you. Lexlee, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. It's really great to be with both of you.
We are really excited to have you and really excited to learn from you.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I've looked at everything that you've done, and it's a lot. So
it's very impressive.
Yes.
But for our listeners who aren't familiar with your work,
right?
Tell us about it.
Well, I've been a lawyer. I'm going to really date myself here for 30 years, and practiced in Baton Rouge and ran a personal injury practice for many years after practicing with my parents. I was very lucky that I got to practice law with my dad. It was an incredible experience before I went out on my own. And about 10 years ago, I started doing some coaching work with different lawyers when I was teaching in a national trial lawyers program, because I had really spent a lot of time figuring out how to really thrive instead of just survive in this practice. So people started coming to me and saying, will you teach me a little bit of that magic, whatever it is? And that just expanded into, now I have a company that works with lawyers and their teams all over the country. And everything to do with performance. My mission is really, I want to have healthy, happy humans, right, at work doing great things. And I think as leaders, our number one job is to inspire greatness in others. And that's what my mission is.
Wow, that is so impressive, because in this day and age, I think wellness takes a back street, and especially in the legal field. I think it's just, we're churning and burning and going 100 miles an hour. So when you're meeting with somebody and they don't really even understand that they don't have peak performance, what do you do?
Well, a lot of times people come to me because they can feel the strain of that, right? So lots of people come to me just being overwhelmed and burned out, but also just struggling, like the team is not where we need to be. What's the problem here? And we spend a lot of money and time investing in different skills, right? As lawyers, as entrepreneurs, as leaders. So you might have, as a lawyer, a case management system that you invest in. You go to different workshops to learn different skill sets and all these things. But these are all strategies that are over here. And over here is the success that you want. In the middle is the people. And so the focus really has to be about the people, and starting with you as a leader. So you use the key term well-being. I don't like to think of it as soft. It's very, very important when it comes to an organization's success, because your people's well-being is totally tied to performance and profitability. And when we don't have well-being, then we have low performance. We have high turnover, which is so costly. I mean, costing us millions of dollars a year in turnover. And when you don't have people truly engaged, which is really a function of well-being, is really being engaged in what they do. And there's statistics out there that say like 70% of the people who are working right now are not truly engaged in their work, which is scary, because you're not getting the full capacity of people, right? And also people are not truly happy. So it all snowballs in together. So I say my number one goal is to teach energy management. That we think we could be about time management. It's such a small part of it. And in this industry, and other industries too, but the legal industry, there's like this unwritten rule about the hustle, right? It's so fast paced. It's so adversarial, all the things. And I like to break the rules now. And I say that it's not about hustling anymore. It's about learning how to manage your energy. So do you understand what I mean when I say energy? What do you think?
Tell us.
Yeah.
Tell us.
So for energy, for me, I think about state and story. So our state is our physical, emotional, mental. You might think of that as mindset. And then there's the story, right? Which is also the mindset part of it. So energy drives everything that we do. It's like we have the invisible energy, visible, what we touch, see, hear, etc. The invisible is the emotion and the story, the thoughts, the beliefs that we have. And what we know, and science has absolutely proven to us, is that emotions are the number one driver of our engagement in life. Emotions define what we care about, how motivated we are, and emotions affect our physiology and the major systems, nervous and hormonal, in huge ways. So when you learn to know how to manage energy when you're looking at emotions, it's a game changer, not just as a leader, but for your people. We have to be teaching people this skill set when they're under this kind of stress. So I know you guys see, like, there's a lot of stress in this industry.
Well, sure. Let's clear up sort of the misconception, right? That in order to be a great trial lawyer, you have to just be killing it at both ends and up all night and working and not being your best self. There's this misnomer, I think, that being emotional is a negative. Right. And so you've really tapped into, let's harness that emotion. Let's be aware of it.
Right. And it ties into, I've watched your podcast and you've talked about mindfulness and things like that before. It ties into that too, right? So in emotions, when we're looking at that, every day we wake up with a certain amount of energy. So if I said this morning, if we had a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is like, I am overwhelmed and burned out, and 10 is like, I am ready to go run a marathon. Where are you today? What would be the number?
I was probably about a 7 today.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I would say okay. I'm an 8.
Yeah. Awesome. So there are lots of factors that go into that, right? Sleep, exercise, what you eat, all of those things. But emotions also are a part of it. And every day we have a wide range of emotions, but I think that we really do, because we're pattern beings. The brain is a pattern storage system and a recognition system. It's always looking for what's familiar, and we're repeating each day. So there usually is an emotional home, like 1 to 3 emotions that are very familiar. So if I said, the legal industry, what do you think is a very familiar emotion for people?
Fear.
Anxiety, right? Which is
anxiety,
fear, right? And that might be true for all of us. I've had fear today. I've had some anxiety today, right? So preparing, wanting to be here, all the things, but excited anxiety. There's different levels of that, right? But what we know is that certain emotions like anxiety, frustration, anger, sadness, the things that you see when we go into fight or flight, which happens instantly. When that happens, when we trigger into those emotions, there's a cascading result of like 1,400 different neurological and hormonal things that are happening in your system, like instantly, unconsciously, which when then we see, we use this term fight or flight. What I can just tell you, when I was practicing law, I used to think, why are men so angry, right? They're so aggressive. And it's because now that I know what I know, they're just in their fight response. That's the modern day response, right? And our flight response is procrastination or withdrawal, those kind of things. So those take a huge drain on the system. And when our systems are in those emotions like anxiety, frustration, anger, etc., what's happening is the brain is like looking and saying, oh, what's going on here? And it's affecting, emotions are affecting what we call our heart rhythm variability. Those rhythms are communicating to your brain. When you are in those state, it messes the brain neural activity up. So literally the thalamus can't control and synchronize everything it needs to. And so you don't have access to the part where you want to be high performing, which would be thinking outside of the box, the frontal cortex. It's like problem solving and the executive functioning things that we need. And it's like those circumstances when you're like in a conversation or you're in court arguing or something, and you're like, later you're like, why didn't I say that? Right? Gosh, I wish you're in the shower and you remember. Why? Because your brain wasn't functioning as well as it could, because you were in fight or flight. You were in this state that was interrupting with that. So we know science is showing us that those types of emotion affect our performance in a huge way. And then the opposite is true. So what's a more empowering emotion do you think is a familiar home for you? Because I think we all can relate to anxiety. What's one that you think you might live in that might be better for your system?
Just a sense of peace. Calm.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's right.
Being productive makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I think being productive is a great.
Yes.
I mean, if you're kind of hamstrung by anxiety or stressed by all the things that are stressing you, you're not able to really perform, right? That's what we're talking about.
Right. And when we look at these different emotions, it doesn't have to be a high energy emotion to be draining. So being bored is actually one that causes, it has the same effect. Your heart rate, you will not be what we call coherent within the system. And then that's a low key emotion, right? So is sadness. It's another one that, right? But the opposite, calm, gratitude, we all talk about gratitude, how much science there is behind that and what that does for us. Gratitude, being centered, etc., causes a whole different things to happen in your system, which then when you are in that state and you're able to get it on the go, it's like, that's what resilience is about, is like being able to charge your battery on the go, because we're like these energy beings. There are different things that we can do besides emotions that will charge us, right? And there's just different practices that we teach that do that. So when you're in that state, then you're able to access the parts of the brain that you really want to have. When I teach law students, I say, look, meditation and mindfulness, I don't care what word you want to use, the buzzword it is. At the end of the day, when you learn to manage your state, you're smarter.
Right. Well, have you found that there is just the legal industry being what it is a high stress environment. It is very competitive. When I first started practicing meditation and mindfulness, I have learned that there tends to be a lot of pushback, like, oh, it's just Zen and kumbaya. And you're talking about neuroscience. There is a lot of science behind this. It's not just getting in touch with the feels, right?
Exactly. So everything I'm giving you, and this is why I can get, when I teach lawyers this, they understand it, because I go from the science perspective, because they're much more analytical and don't want to be like, we don't have to be sitting on top of a mountain with the candle flame, right? Like, I'm talking about, this is what they use in sports performance. The techniques that I'm teaching are some that were put out by Heart Math Institute, which has been the leading and looking at how emotions affect performance. And what they teach, we're teaching special forces, we're teaching the military, we're teaching police, because in those circumstances, high stress, we don't want people responding from that fight or flight space. That's where danger, really, really, lethal danger comes in those circumstances. So what we're teaching is, it's the leading, right? I was just reading an article about, I think his name is Leon Marchand. He was the gold medalist this year. He's like a 4-time gold medalist. And they wrote an article about him, and it got flagged for me because his performance coach. So, these athletes have performance coaches. That's basically what we're trying to do with how we're trying to help teams. His performance coach taught him heart coherency, which is what I'm talking to you about, which is really put out in the world by Heart Math. And he says, this is what helps me to get in control of my mind and my body. That's the thing that makes me win.
It seems so funny to me that the sports world has really embraced performance coaching and hitting exactly what you're hitting. And the legal industry,
business world has not.
It has not, right?
I know.
You're so right. They take pride in the more stress, the more you do,
it's
the
like,
less
I've
sleep
not
you get.
slept. This is a badge of honor.
Right.
That's not good for
And
you.
and the problem with that is that, it's just this, I think, again, that's like sort of like an unspoken rule that we think that we have to be that way. And really, you're so much less effective. Okay. Like, you're not performing at your best. And then let's look at what that does to a team. So team coherence is totally based upon individual coherence. So if who I am affects who you are, right? That's basically, we could say, what my energy is affects yours. My 16-year-old would say, when I'm really anxious and he's got me in a bad moment and I respond from that space, he'll go, it's a whole lot of energy, Mom. He knows, because he's been taught, right?
Yes. But it's like how your significant other, if they're having a bad day.
Exactly.
If my husband's having a bad day, I'm having a bad day, right? It infects you almost.
Exactly. So when you're on a team, one team member, and I see this all the time, one team member can kill your your culture and your company and your profitability, your productivity, everything. But teaching people, that's the key to coherence personally and in a team, is teaching people self-regulation. Self-regulation of attitudes, behaviors, and emotions is key to collaboration, connection, and really being in sync. You know, these high performing teams, like a really great football team that's having the most amazing game, or being in a symphony where everything comes together. It's like they all seem to speak to each other in an unspoken. They're in the flow. That's the peak performance. And that's because there is an energy of connection that happens there that cannot happen if people are incoherent.
Everyone has to be firing.
Yeah. And it makes a difference. Like, I can remember when I was trying cases, it makes a difference. Like, even the team that you have in there, the person that's sitting with you, you know, first chair or second chair, when you have that kind of connection and collaboration, it's unspoken. You know what needs to happen, right? It makes a huge difference in performance. And when it comes into teams, we know that self-regulation, if we were teaching people how to self-regulate, that is directly correlated, not self-regulating, is definitely correlated with health problems and any kind of relational discord that we have. And our work and our team is all about relationships. And when I say this is about inspiring people to be the best they can be, it's teaching them that. So when we go in, we teach teams. We teach them simple practices to do together. If there's conflict, we teach them, look, if you have conflict, because we've now talked about this, let's get coherent before we have this conversation. We teach a technique called coherent communication, which is all about first being in a good space that I can hear you and I'm not going to get triggered. And if I'm triggered, I need to slow it down, right? Because communication is like 75% of the mistakes that we make in the workplace all come down to communication.
I believe that. So let's, you are giving us so much information. I think there's so much to unpack. I'm curious, let's back up a little bit to, you said you practiced for 30 years as a trial lawyer, which you have an excellent skincare routine, because I do not believe you practiced for 30 years. Talk to us about when you were practicing, what you sort of ran into that made you feel like, I'm going to go a different route and go down the path that you're doing.
I think I was 31, maybe 32, and walked out of a courtroom for a hearing in northern Louisiana and thought I was having a heart attack. Like, serious, full on chest pain, got taken to the emergency room. They do a test, like there's something that can be elevated in your blood for bruising. Well, that was elevated. So they thought I was too, and gave me nitroglycerin and bottomed out my blood pressure because I wasn't having a heart attack. It was a fun experience. And then they're like, we're going to put you through all these tests. And they did. And they came back and they said, what's happening is, like, in the scope, your esophagus is going crazy and it's contracting down. And that's why, because it is involved in the same muscles. You need to take some medicine. And I was like, I am not, what? Like, no, what's going on here is that I am stressed out. I have a 3-year-old. I'm working incredible, insane hours with really aggressive, not nice people on the other side. It's a lot of pressure, right? To win for the client, to, what we're doing for people. We're trying to help people. There's a lot of pressure there with that. And so I just decided I didn't want to just be surviving. And at 31, that's where I was. That's too young.
Right.
So I started in on a path first on meditation. And then it just led me into studying all different kinds of things, including I've studied a lot of neuroscience, which is why I can talk about the brain the way that I can talk about it. And I just know it can be different. And I know that we're teaching people to be different, to be happier and healthier. And then they're at the next level, right? Without all of what we think has to be like the burnout, the stress, the drain. Like, if I'm not exhausted, then I'm not winning.
Right. So what do you think it is about lawyers specifically that they really seem to struggle with being coherent?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Not incoherent. I think it's a couple of things. So we talked about that. One, I said energy management is 2 things, state and story. Okay. So one is learning to manage your state, having awareness of what emotions you're in, what's your emotional home. We just gave that. That also ties into the story. There's there's some beliefs, a lot of times they're unconscious, that are driving us, right? Some of them are going to be empowering beliefs that give great emotional states, and some of them are going to be disempowering.
Give us some examples.
Okay. An empowering one for me is, I think, and this is because I've been doing this practice for 25 years, is I really try and several times a day that I am looking around for what I am grateful for, right? And so I am grateful for, and whatever it is, it's empowering, right? Disempowering one for me right now, which is interesting with everything that I teach. It's just because there's a lot going on in life, but there's still a disempowering belief that there's not enough time. I'm not going to get it all done, which in some way underneath that, it's a little bit of a belief. Am I enough to get it all done? Right? Am I enough to be able to do this? And so having awareness of that is very, very important. I think for lawyers, that what happens is, as humans, we naturally go to the worst case scenario. So if something is going to happen in the future.
I definitely do that.
Yes, we all do. The brain is trying to protect us, and it's looking for a pattern. And it says, oh, you're anxious about that, and that wasn't good the last time that happened. Let's not do that. And here's all the things that are going to go wrong, and here's what you need to think about and what you need to worry about so it doesn't happen again, right? So
it turns out to be everything.
Right.
And I think to stress about everything.
And I think as lawyers, we do that even more because we're taught to look for the worst case scenario. I'm trying to plan for what he's going to throw at me. Where are they going to come from? What's the the argument that's going to be there? I mean, there is, I wonder if it's happened to you, or if you found yourself saying this to people, don't talk to me like a lawyer.
I say that all the time. As a jury consultant, I spend a lot of time. That's great. You go to law school, you want to sound like the smartest person in the room. Right. If you're talking to a jury, that does not
But
work.
Also just the way that you keep questioning, we can question things in a way that it's really trying to find the thing that we need to prepare for, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's very important to start to look at what the story is. And we're story beings. I mean, you know that as a jury consultant, you see it all the time in your work with lawyers. We're story beings, right? So every day we have somewhere between 60 to 90,000 thoughts. I think that's unbelievable.
I'm tired. Just saying that, I'm tired.
And here's the crazy thing. 90% of what you have today will be the same thing you did yesterday.
Oh, that doesn't sound productive.
No, it does not.
But that's part of the story, right? Because we go for the familiar. So it's really starting to look at the kind of questions you can ask yourself is if I'm feeling anxious, what's the story here that I'm telling myself? What am I worried about? What am I saying? Because it's not true, whatever it is, it hasn't happened yet, right? It's not any more true than the best case scenario happening, right? So what's the story? And it really is looking at what's the meaning I'm assigning to this, right? And does that serve me? And if it doesn't, how can you change it?
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay, so listening to everything that you're saying, every single firm needs to hire you and bring you in. And we have a lot of listeners, lawyers and non-lawyers. So everything you've talked about, how does an individual implement this if they, from what you've said, they recognize things are going on, but you're not coming into their firm or their company? What can they individually do to help improve their situation and their performance?
Right. So one, it takes awareness. It's really stopping and thinking, am I at my best? And what is the thing that's getting in the way? What's the story? What's the emotional state that I'm living in? How do I can start? Once you have awareness, I say the first step is awareness. Mm-hmm. If you have awareness, you can shift something. If you don't, and you're just unconscious, you're repeating 90% of yesterday, right? Nothing is going to change. So awareness is first, is starting to ask yourself the questions. And then very simple practices, I'm happy. I don't know if y'all link to the page. I have energy practices. I call them energy practices because they are.
We can definitely link it.
We put out there that these are the ones that if you just tried these, you would change, right? And I could lead you guys through a very quick one that's very powerful.
I love that. Yes.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I love to do it. I mean,
okay.
So let's talk about a moment behind the why again, because I think when people understand why, they're more likely to engage. So we talked about emotions affecting our physiology, affecting the heart rhythms, affects the brain rhythms. Okay. all of that is something, the story is driving that in some way too. If you are already anxious, you have to do something to physically switch yourself out of fight or flight. And we see that in in nature. I'm a country girl. I grew up in a small town in Louisiana outside of Baton Rouge, about an hour outside. My backyard was a cow pasture. But my brothers, deer hunt and all the things. And I've been on a deer hunt. I've seen a deer be shot at and run, and they will stop and they'll do this whole shake. And what they're doing is they're resetting themselves out of fight or flight. We don't do that as humans. We stay in some chronic low stress fight or flight response almost all day long, which is why it's the basis of they say that there's a statistic of like 90% of the people walking into a hospital in the Western world are walking in because of chronic low level stress is the underlying cause of what that health challenge is.
We're just used to living in that space.
Yes, we don't even know what it's like to be until you start to do practices that get you centered, what it's like to be in a space where you're centered and calm. So this is a very simple practice. It's the heart coherency practice that, the Olympic swimmer talked about, that heart math teaches, and it doesn't take any time at all. And everybody listening can do it wherever you are. I have lawyers doing this all over the country in courtrooms. They're all doing it, standing there while they're waiting for their turn to talk. Okay. So as we're talking, you're just going to, for a moment, bring your awareness to the center of your chest. And you do that with your eyes open. You could also practice it with your eyes closed you could do that right now and you're not driving or anything. But take a moment, just bring your awareness to the center of your chest and then begin to follow your breath in and out of the heart space. So your focal point is on the center of the chest and you're just following your breath in and out. And now I'm going to invite you to slow it down a little bit. This is the part where we're going to switch things. So I want you to imagine, count from 1 to 5. So let's inhale together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now just keep doing that on your own. Something that's comfortable for you, but a little slower. And as you continue to do that, I just want you to think about someone that you're so grateful for in your life. Your best friend, the person who's got your back, your partner, maybe a child, someone you're just so grateful for, and just feel the feelings of gratitude. And at the same time, following your breath in and out of the heart space. And then just take a breath. And how do you feel?
Lighter.
Yeah.
Much lighter.
Well, when you're doing that, you're not thinking about the 1,000 things that
right?
are running.
So the very first thing was to focus, right? Focus on your heart and then on your breath. You just interrupted the story. Then I had you slow it down, because if we're in fight or flight, we got to do something physically. So deep breaths and deep breathing practices are very powerful, and your breath is with you wherever you go. So it doesn't cost anything.
Thing that will sort of abandon you when you start to panic, right?
You hold your breath.
You don't realize
you hold your breath.
Super shallow.
Right. So you want to do it a little bit deeper, because that stimulates the vagus nerve, which is running from your brain to your gut, right? So that will help to slow down and get you back into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that's about calm and
tells your body, it's okay, we're not actually under attack.
Right, because we're the only beings that can think about something, and physically our whole body will respond as if it's real, right? That's when we get the aggressive client email, let's say, or aggressive email from, opposing counsel, and all of a sudden we're like, in fight or flight, we're afraid as if we would be if we were in a jungle facing a tiger, right? That's the kind of response that happens in your system. Mm-hmm. So we're doing something to slow it down. So deep breathing is really great. So you just slow it down. If I had you on a biofeedback, and we use that with our teams. We have an app that's really cool that you can see people's heart rhythm variability, and there are different levels to get to coherency. Just doing those two things, we would get you a little bit higher on the coherency score. But if I wanted you really to be coherent, I have to have you tap into a different emotion. That's why gratitude. Gratitude is the easiest. It's the fastest way to shift your state. One of you, I heard say on a podcast, you can't be,
You can't be mad and
No, you can't be grateful if you're being
and hateful.
That's
yeah.
right.
And hateful.
Yes. Right. You can't, right? If you are in gratitude and you're truly in gratitude, you can't be in anything else. So it's the fastest way to shift. So when we're teaching teams, we teach them just that heart coherency. You should do all that together. One of the techniques, we do the same thing that we just did, but we ask you, instead of, if you want to put gratitude, that's great, but what do you want to put into this space, to this team, in this meeting together? What's the energy that you bring? Because remember, we're energy beings, and I'm going to pick up on it.
Right.
There's absolutely no doubt that our nervous systems picks up on the energies of other people, and we can be affected by that. If someone's really, really anxious or really sad, all of a sudden we could be all in it, and it's not our story, right? Because we're picking up the energy of that. You probably see that a lot with doing your work with juries, is that, you can tell. I don't care how good of a speaker you are. If you don't believe what you're saying, they know it. That's an energy thing, right?
Well, it's as simple as, I was picking a jury yesterday, a very big, important case, but a complex breach of contract case. Geotechnical issues happening in this breach of contract case, not something your average juror is going to be gravitating towards. And what I've seen lawyers in the past will do, they'll get in front of a jury and they'll say, oh gosh, I know nobody wants to be here, and everybody came down and the parking sucked. And just like, you can literally feel the energy. Yes, and it was not good to begin with, but when you start, and this fantastic trial lawyer started, and he said, I'm really excited to be here, and you don't know it yet, but you are too. And everybody laughed. And it just really brought the energy in the room up. And it's as simple as that. Sometimes I say it all the time, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, but juries will actually feel the energy for sure.
Yeah.
Jurors are people.
And I tell lawyers all the time that the people that we're drawn to are the people who are the most grounded in the space. So if I am grounded and I am calm and I am centered, people are going to be more drawn to me, because we want to be that. If I'm really anxious, I'm really like all over the place, there's a lot of you automatically sort of pull yourself back. You're like, you don't want that.
Right.
So these practices are really important when it comes, all of it comes down to that this is about connection. And everything about business is about connection.
Definitely.
That's all it is, right?
Yeah.
Your team, it's relationships, your clients, all of that is about connection. And so when you can get it where people understand that and they know how to regulate their emotions to be in the best space, then they're impacting other people. And that's where you can start to build the zone of people being in sync. Right? It's the same energies, right? We collaborate more. If I am incoherent, I'm less likely to connect to you, to want to problem solve with you. I'm going to be more aggressive, because that's how I get when I get really short when I'm anxious, kind of thing. So that's why it's so important when you're leading teams. But about anything, if we're looking at relationships, who I am impacts who you are, right? And that's why I think about it as energy, because it is. Everything is energy, right? And in between us. So it's just very, very, when you start to look at the world that way and recognize that you have the ability to control. And the only thing that you can control is yourself. The only thing I can control is my
attitude and effort.
There you go. My state and my story is the only thing I can control. And I think that's so important in life in general and in the legal practice, because there are a lot of things out of our control. And when I'm working with lawyers, there's a lot of pressure, because you're really, I might have somebody, if I was back in my personal injury practice, I might be doing a case that's really dependent upon this family having, their medical care taken care of for the rest of their lives. Or, I work with a lot of criminal defense firms. They have people's freedoms, their lives in their hands. It's a lot of pressure.
I have long thought PI lawyers and criminal defense lawyers really can suffer from this post or secondary trauma response, because you are constantly surrounded by people that are experiencing trauma.
There's the secondary trauma response, which again is we're impacted by the things that are in our environment, right? But also recognizing that I'm not going to win every case, and I can only control certain things. and it's the effort, right? So to focus back in. God bless you.
Thank you.
Focus back in. Have I done everything that I can? Have I prepared? Have I done everything that I can? And if I have, I just show up and I have to do that. And everything else is not in my control. But what we do is we say, oh, if we don't get the verdict that we wanted, I'm not a good enough lawyer. I did something wrong. We internalize that. And that's all the stress that comes back into it. And of course, we do that even outside the legal field, right? If I try something and I fail, we can turn that into internalizing. That totally affects how we act in the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I got to know, awareness being the first step, right? So what would you say to the lawyer that thinks like, I'm doing okay. I get fine sleep and I'm stressed, but they justify the stressors that impact them. What would you say to the lawyer that isn't firing on all their best cylinders, but thinks that, they don't have that awareness that some people are sort of pushed to, where they have to tap out and they say, I'm too stressed? What would you say to the lawyer that thinks, I'm managing my stress okay?
And sometimes we are. Stress is not stress, but the fight or flight, the system response that happens, which is going in the sympathetic nervous system, which is stepping on the gas pedal. Mm-hmm. The opposite is being calm, right? So if I need to step on the gas, I need that sometimes. I need that pressure to get out of bed, to write that motion, to show up, to do the thing. My 17-year-old is like, I really don't like to do homework after I come home from wrestling. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of things, right? That's right. You're going to have the pressure of mama that's going to make you want to step on the gas pedal to get that done, right? Sometimes we need we need that. There's some of that is needed, but it's knowing how to reset. So sometimes people really are managing it okay. If they really are sleeping okay, I would say they probably are, because when we're really truly not managing it, we're dumping so much cortisol in our system. The first thing you see is that sleep goes, right? There's difficulty sleeping, not sleeping long enough, not deep enough sleep, all of those things. But I just challenge, just like saying, I do okay playing the piano, but I could be taught something that could bring me to the next level.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if lawyers don't want anything else, it's to be average. Next level. Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants to be average. Right. Absolutely not.
And so you don't want to be average with your energy either.
No. Why would we, right? We want to be at the best place that we can be. And that's the whole thing about, then it's, the ABA, when they did their study in 2016 on lawyers, and they found like 40% of the people that participated in that study said that they were problem drinkers. 30% had severe depressive disorders, and then it was the sleep and all the things. They said, we really need to talk about well-being that you brought up right in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And well-being is going to be defined as a continuous process to thrive across all of life's dimensions. So we're not just talking, work is what we do the most of, but what we're talking about well-being is like, this is living life to the best. We only got one shot at it.
Yeah. If your work life is great and your home life is shitty, guess what?
Same thing. You're not balanced. It's not, there's something wrong with right? With the energy that is there. So it's looking at just being better and happier, Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's really good. All right. I want to ask you, name 3 things. I think I know what they are. To summarize everything you've just said, if somebody individually wants to make a difference with their fight or flight.
Okay. So 3 things would be to start to have awareness and ask yourself, where am I? And what I mean by where am I physically? Where am I emotionally? Where am I mentally? Maybe even where am I spiritually? Where am I? Where is my energy? Is it serving me? Would be the second question, right? Because that's the story too. And then the third is what could I do to empower myself more? There are lots of things that don't have to necessarily be, you're going to sit down and meditate to fuel your energy. Think about what are energy drains in your life? People, social media, emails, social media, gossiping, right? There are all kinds of things, right? What can I do to empower my energy, to get my energy in a better space? So where am I? Is it serving me? And what can I do to empower it?
Wow, those are really great tips. We are so excited to have you. I can see us bringing you back on again.
I love it.
Come back tomorrow. I
thank you for being here.
So much to learn. That was fantastic.
Awesome.
If anyone has any comments, questions, first of all, how can they find you, Lexlee?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook under Lexlee Overton or on Instagram. And if you want those energy practices and you follow me there and put energy, I'll drop it to you. I'll put it, in a DM to you, but we can also link to those practices.
Yes, we will definitely link to it below. And then also, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to email us at hello@ladiesinlaw.com. Thank you. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Ladies in Law. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to shake things up in law and business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know what you think. Spread the word and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on socials for all the behind-the-scenes fun and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Until next time, keep rocking it, keep breaking the mold, and as always, keep aspiring to inspire.